This is the story of a poor young mother named Hannah, and a billionaire named Dominic. One struggled with hunger and cold. The other had everything money could buy. But on a rainy morning in Lagos, fate brought them together, in a way no one could have predicted. And what happened next will move you to tears. It was a chilly morning. The rain fell gently, soaking everything in sight. Cars rushed by on the busy streets of Lagos. At the corner of a road, Hannah stood quietly, clutching her baby girl, Julia, to her chest. The baby was wrapped in a thin cloth. She whimpered weakly, her small body shivering. Hannah had no umbrella, no jacket, no food, not even a home. Her slippers were worn out, and her soaked dress clung to her cold skin. Still, she didn't move. She couldn't. The night before, she and her baby had gone to bed without a single bite to eat. So even though it was raining, she stood by the roadside, praying someone, anyone, would help. Not for her sake, but for Julia, who hadn't stopped crying from hunger. She couldn't bear to see her child suffer again. People walked past, some glanced with pity, others looked away. Two men nearby whispered, "Why is she standing in the rain like that?" "Maybe she's pretending," one replied. "Some people even rent babies just to get money." Hannah heard them. But she stayed silent. She gently wiped Julia's face and rocked her in her arms. Then she stretched out her hand and said quietly, with pain in her voice, "Please, just a little food for my baby. She hasn't eaten. Please." Julia's lips were dry, her cry barely a whisper. Hannah held her tighter. "Don't worry, my baby. Mommy will find food today. I promise." What Hannah didn't know, was that help was much closer than she thought. Just a few meters away, inside a black SUV, sat a man, watching. His name was Dominic. He was the kind of wealthy that made people pause when he passed. That morning, he was headed to an important business meeting, one that could bring international deals to his company. As traffic moved slowly through the usual Lagos chaos, Dominic leaned back in his seat. He stared out the window, and that's when he saw her. A young woman, standing in the rain, holding a baby. She wasn't shouting, she wasn't begging loudly. She just stood there, tired, soaked, yet gently asking for help. Dominic's eyes stayed fixed on her. The way she clung to that baby, it wasn't just love. It was survival. Something stirred inside him. This wasn't an act. This was real pain. Real desperation. He leaned forward. "Stop the car," Dominic said. The driver turned, surprised. "Sir." "I said stop." The SUV pulled over. Dominic stepped into the rain, his polished shoes splashing onto the wet road. His designer suit began to soak through. But he didn't care. He walked slowly toward Hannah. She didn't even notice him at first. She was still rocking Julia. Dominic stood in front of her. She looked up, startled. A tall, serious-looking man stood just inches away. His face, though stern, carried kindness. "Good morning," Dominic said gently. Hannah nodded, unsure. She didn't speak. "What's her name?" He picked up a small towel and handed it to her. "Here. Use this to dry the baby." "Thank you, sir," she whispered, wrapping it around Julia's tiny body. "What's your name?" he asked. "Hannah." "Where's your home?" She didn't answer right away. Then in a low voice, she replied, "We sleep on the street, sir." Dominic simply nodded. He didn't flinch. "All right," he said. "I'll take you somewhere safe." "Really, sir?" Hannah's eyes widened. "Yes. Somewhere warm. You both need rest. And food." Tears welled up in Hannah's eyes. But she wiped them quickly. "Thank you, sir. God bless you." Dominic didn't say more. He looked out the window, deep in thought. But Hannah had no idea, this was just the beginning. Dominic checked his watch again. He was nearly late for that major meeting. The foreign investors were probably waiting. But then he looked at Hannah. At little Julia. Cold. Hungry. Exhausted. He shook his head. "No," he muttered. "They need food first." He told the driver to stop at a small restaurant. They went inside. Dominic didn't care who stared. He ordered hot rice, fried plantain, chicken, and warm milk for the baby. He also asked for water. Hannah sat on the edge of the chair, still holding Julia. Her stomach turned painfully, she hadn't eaten in 2 days. When the food arrived, she looked at Dominic. "Can I eat here, sir?" "Yes." "Eat," he said. She nodded gratefully and placed Julia on her lap. She fed her the warm milk, then slowly began eating herself. She ate as if the food might disappear. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she chewed. Dominic said nothing. He just watched in silence. When she finished, she wiped her mouth and looked at him. "Thank you, sir. God bless you." Dominic leaned forward. "Tell me, what happened to you? How did you end up like this?" She looked down at Julia, kissed her forehead, and began. "Sir. I have no one. My parents died when I was a child. I grew up in an orphanage in Ibadan. Life was hard. As I got older, I learned to survive. I worked in homes, cleaned, cooked, washed clothes, whatever I could do." She paused and smiled faintly at Julia. "Then I met Jacob. He was a taxi driver in Lagos. He was kind, and we fell in love. After a year, Jacob promised marriage. When she got pregnant, she was scared. But Jacob was happy. He said he had to travel to tell his family, it was their custom. That was the last time she saw him." Dominic's eyes widened. "He said he'd return in a week. He never did. His number stopped working. I searched. I cried. I begged his friends. But no one would help. I lost the room I was renting. No job would hire me, not with a pregnancy. So I started sleeping outside. And begging, just to survive." She wiped her tears. "Now Julia is all I have." Dominic looked at the baby, now peacefully asleep. Then he looked at Hannah. She was still young, still hopeful. But life had pushed her to the edge. He took a deep breath, and made a silent promise. This would not be her ending. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a bundle of cash. He placed it gently on the table. "Take this. For you and your baby." Hannah's hands trembled. "Sir, this is too much. I can't accept it." Dominic looked her in the eyes. "You need it. Take it." She looked down at her baby, then clutched the money to her chest. "Thank you, sir. God bless you." "You, sir, may God bless you," Hannah said with a soft smile. Dominic gave a polite nod and returned a small smile. But when he glanced at his wristwatch, his eyes widened, he was already late. The foreign guests were likely already waiting at his office. He stood up suddenly. "I have a very important meeting this morning. It'll last about 3 hours." From his wallet, he pulled out a business card and handed it to her. "Call me after 3 hours. I'll come to wherever you are and take you and your baby to a safe place." Hannah received the card with great care, holding it like treasure. She wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. She didn't even own a phone. Still, she nodded politely. "Thank you, sir." She thought quickly. "Maybe I can pay someone to help me make the call." Dominic gave her one last look. "I'll be waiting for your call," he said, then turned and left the restaurant. Hannah sat quietly, holding Julia in one arm and the business card in the other. For the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of hope. After a few minutes, she folded the card carefully and slipped it into a tiny pocket sewn inside Julia's clothes. The baby was sleeping soundly. Hannah adjusted her little blanket without waking her and stepped out of the restaurant. But as she moved, the card slipped silently to the ground near the doorway. She didn't notice. Nobody did. The rain had stopped. The sun peeked through the clouds. Hannah walked slowly and caught a public bus back to the place where Dominic first saw her. She returned to the small shop near the corner, now empty, and sat under the dry shade of the roof. She was confident she still had the card and waited patiently, thinking, when it's time, I'll pay someone to call him for me. But the card was no longer with her. Meanwhile, in a tall office building across the city, Dominic wrapped up his meeting. The foreign guests were gone, the presentation had been a success. But instead of feeling triumphant, he looked uneasy. He checked his phone, no missed calls. 5 hours had passed. Why hasn't she called? Did she forget? Or, was she just pretending? He frowned. But she didn't seem like someone pretending. She looked scared. Desperate. He remembered how she cried, how she held her baby so close, like the world might snatch her away. His chest tightened. I told her I'd help. Why wouldn't she want that? Still no call. He sighed and placed his phone on the desk, but his heart remained restless. Elsewhere in Lagos, under that same little shop roof, Hannah sat silently, still waiting. Still hopeful. Unaware that the card was long gone. It was lunchtime. Dominic climbed into his black SUV and stared out the window. Something felt off. Take me back to that small restaurant, he told his driver. The one where I took the woman and her baby this morning. The SUV rolled through the busy streets. Dominic scanned every corner, hoping he might see her. His thoughts were heavy. What if she tried to call but couldn't? What if she lost the card? When they reached the restaurant, he stepped out quickly and scanned the area. No sign of Hannah. No sign of the baby. He moved slowly to the entrance. Just before stepping inside, he noticed something on the ground. Wet, fragile, and barely clinging to the cement, his business card. He bent down and picked it up. The edges were soft from the rain, but the writing was still clear. His heart dropped. Did she throw it away, or did it fall? He looked around again. Nothing. Inside, he returned to the same table they sat at that morning. A waitress approached. Good afternoon, sir. What would you like to eat? He didn't smile. Just rice and chicken, he said softly. As she walked away, he leaned back and stared at the card. His mind was torn. She left. She lost it. Which voice was telling the truth? Across town, Hannah sat under the shade, still unaware the card was gone. Julia slept in her arms. It was time. She reached into the tiny pocket of Julia's clothes, but her hand stopped. Her heart froze. The card was gone. Panic rose in her chest. She checked again. Nothing. Checked her own wrapper. Nothing. Tears filled her eyes. Oh no, 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 she whispered. She slumped forward, clutching Julia to her chest. God sent someone to help me. A good man. And now I've lost him. She wept, holding Julia tightly. I'm sorry, baby. Mommy lost the only chance we had. Then, an idea. Maybe it fell in the bus, or at the restaurant. The bus was long gone. But the restaurant, she remembered where it was. She stood up, still crying but now with renewed hope. I must go back. Maybe someone picked it up. She wrapped Julia securely on her back and walked fast, whispering, "God, please, let it still be there." After boarding a small yellow bus, she rode silently, her eyes glued to the road. At each stop, her heart beat faster. Finally, they reached the area. She came down and walked quickly toward the restaurant, unaware that just minutes earlier, Dominic had left in his car. She reached the door, breathing heavily. Everything looked the same. But the table was empty. She checked under it. Nothing. She turned to a waitress. "Excuse me, please, did anyone find a card here?" "A small one." The waitress shook her head. "No, madam. We cleaned everything." "Nothing like that." Hannah's hope collapsed. She stepped outside. Julia began to cry. Hannah couldn't hold back her own tears. So close, so close. And now it's gone. That night, Hannah returned to the cold, unfinished building. She laid Julia on a pile of clothes and sat beside her. "God. I don't want my child to grow up like this," she whispered. She remembered Dominic's eyes. His kindness. The food. The money. And the card. Lost forever. "I'll never see him again," she murmured. But just before she closed her eyes, she made a decision. "I'll go back. To the place where he first saw me. Maybe he'll come there again." She didn't sleep much. Wind blew through the cracks in the building. Mosquitoes bit her arms. Julia cried in the night. Still. Hannah held on. By sunrise, she was already preparing. She cleaned Julia with water from a bowl, brushed her tiny hair, and whispered, "We'll be okay. I promise." She didn't beg that day. She just stood at the same spot where Dominic had first seen her. Watching. Waiting. Hoping. But today. Dominic was at home. His younger brother Salem was returning after 17 years in Atlanta. Dominic didn't go to the office. He was excited and busy. He called the chef, planned a feast, fried rice, jollof, goat meat, pounded yam, Salem's favorite. He called his friends. There was music and laughter. Dominic stood on the balcony, smiling. "This is a good day," he whispered. Far away, Hannah was still on the street. Still waiting. Still hopeful. She didn't know Dominic was celebrating. She didn't know he wasn't coming out today. "God, please, don't forget me," she prayed. Meanwhile, at the airport, Salem arrived. The driver greeted him with a sign. On the way back, Lagos traffic brought them to a crawl. As the car moved slowly, the driver saw her. There, by the side of the road. The same woman. The same baby. The driver gripped the wheel. Salem noticed. Something wrong. The driver hesitated. "No, sir, just the traffic." He didn't know what to do. Should he stop? Should he call Dominic? But he said nothing, and kept driving. Just as Dominic's close friend stepped out and greeted Salem with laughter and cheer, one person remained unusually quiet, the driver. Standing near the car, his eyes kept drifting to Dominic, anxious and restless. He needed to speak, fast. Before the woman disappeared again. As the guests walked into the mansion, the driver silently followed. He didn't speak, just waited by the main door. Moments later, Dominic headed to the kitchen to check on the food. The chef was busy slicing meat when the driver approached quietly. "Excuse me, sir," he said in a low tone. Dominic turned. "Yes. What is it?" The driver took a breath. "Sir, I saw her." Dominic's expression changed instantly. "Who?" "The woman from yesterday, sir. The one with the baby. She's standing at the same spot where you met her." Dominic fell silent, eyes drifting down in thought. the woman who threw away my card? He wondered. Does she truly want help? He remembered the rain. The way she had shielded her baby. Her words, "My baby didn't eat last night." Something stirred inside him. Maybe she was scared, he murmured. Maybe she didn't throw that card away deliberately. He looked up at the driver. Go back there now. If she's still there, ask her why she didn't call. If her reason makes sense, and if you see truth in her face, bring her to me. Yes, sir, the driver nodded, and hurried out. By the roadside, Hannah stood in the hot sun, little Julia sweating in her arms. Her eyes scanned every passing car. It's already past 12, she whispered. If he was going to the office, he should have passed by now. She looked down at Julia. Let's go find some shade, my baby. Just as she turned to walk away, she heard a voice, Madam. She spun around. A red SUV had stopped. The window rolled down. It was Dominic's driver. Her heart jumped. The door opened. Their eyes met. Hannah's filled with tears. I'm sorry, she began, trembling. I lost the card. I looked everywhere, even went back to the restaurant. But it was gone. The driver studied her face. Her sweat. Her tired eyes. Her grip on her baby. She wasn't lying. She wasn't pretending. Please follow me, he said gently. She nodded. As they drove off, Hannah stared out the window, whispering, Thank you, God. I'm sorry, she began, trembling. I lost the card. I looked everywhere, even went back to the restaurant. But it was gone. The driver studied her face. Her sweat. Her tired eyes. Her grip on her baby. She wasn't lying. She wasn't pretending. Please follow me, he said gently. She nodded. As they drove off, Hannah stared out the window, whispering, Thank you, God. The red SUV pulled into Dominic's compound. Hannah stepped out slowly, heart pounding. The house looked unreal, too beautiful to be real. Come with me, the driver said kindly. Inside, the sound of laughter came from the sitting room. Dominic was chatting with Salem and other guests. But as soon as he looked up and saw Hannah, his smile faded. She moved toward him and dropped to her knees to greet him. No, please don't, Dominic said, gently helping her up. The room fell silent. All eyes were on them. Without explanation, Dominic said, Come with me. He led her down the hallway to a clean guest room. Please, take a proper bath. You and your baby. You can rest here. Hannah nodded slowly, eyes still wide with disbelief. Dominic walked back to the kitchen. There's a woman in the guest room, he told the chef. Feed her well. Don't delay. Yes, sir, the chef replied. Later that evening, with the guests gone, Dominic, Salem, and Hannah sat together in the living room. Hannah, now bathed and dressed in clean clothes, looked transformed. Julia slept quietly in her arms. You said you lost the card, Dominic asked. Yes, sir. I looked everywhere. I even returned to the restaurant. But I didn't find it. My phone got bad before I gave birth. I haven't had one since. Dominic listened. Salem remained silent but deeply moved. I can't change the past, Dominic said softly. But I can help your future. Think about it. Is there something you'd like to do? A business? A skill to learn? I'll set it up for you. Hannah blinked, stunned. You'll stay here for now, he added, until I find a place for you. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Thank you, she whispered. Dominic nodded. In his heart, he knew he had just made a decision that would change Hannah's life forever. A few days later, Dominic entered the guest room smiling. Get ready, he said. We're going out. Out? Hannah asked, surprised. Yes. You and Julia need something important. Soon, they were in the car. Hannah looked out the window, still unable to believe this was real. They arrived at a large clothing shop. Dominic led them inside. Pick anything you like, he said. I'm sorry, she began, trembling. I lost the card. I looked everywhere, even went back to the restaurant. But it was gone. The driver studied her face. Her sweat. Her tired eyes. Her grip on her baby. She wasn't lying. She wasn't pretending. Please follow me, he said gently. She nodded. As they drove off, Hannah stared out the window, whispering, "Thank you, God." "I'm sorry," she began, trembling. "I lost the card. I looked everywhere, even went back to the restaurant. But it was gone." The driver studied her face. Her sweat. Her tired eyes. Her grip on her baby. She wasn't lying. She wasn't pretending. "Please follow me," he said gently. She nodded. As they drove off, Hannah stared out the window, whispering, "Thank you, God." The red SUV pulled into Dominic's compound. Hannah stepped out slowly, heart pounding. The house looked unreal, too beautiful to be real. "Come with me," the driver said kindly. Inside, the sound of laughter came from the sitting room. Dominic was chatting with Salem and other guests. But as soon as he looked up and saw Hannah, his smile faded. She moved toward him and dropped to her knees to greet him. "No, please don't," Dominic said, gently helping her up. The room fell silent. All eyes were on them. Without explanation, Dominic said, "Come with me." He led her down the hallway to a clean guest room. "Please, take a proper bath. You and your baby. You can rest here." Hannah nodded slowly, eyes still wide with disbelief. Dominic walked back to the kitchen. "There's a woman in the guest room," he told the chef. "Feed her well. Don't delay." "Yes, sir," the chef replied. Later that evening, with the guests gone, Dominic, Salem, and Hannah sat together in the living room. Hannah, now bathed and dressed in clean clothes, looked transformed. Julia slept quietly in her arms. "You said you lost the card," Dominic asked. "Yes, sir. I looked everywhere. I even returned to the restaurant. But I didn't find it. My phone got bad before I gave birth. I haven't had one since." Dominic listened. Salem remained silent but deeply moved. "I can't change the past," Dominic said softly. "But I can help your future. Think about it. Is there something you'd like to do? A business? A skill to learn? I'll set it up for you." Hannah blinked, stunned. "You'll stay here for now," he added, "until I find a place for you." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. Dominic nodded. In his heart, he knew he had just made a decision that would change Hannah's life forever. A few days later, Dominic entered the guest room smiling. "Get ready," he said. "We're going out." "Out?" Hannah asked, surprised. "Yes. You and Julia need something important." Soon, they were in the car. Hannah looked out the window, still unable to believe this was real. They arrived at a large clothing shop. Dominic led them inside. "Pick anything you like," he said. "I've tried this number for over a year," Evelyn continued. "It was always off. But today it went through." There was silence. "My cousin. Jacob, he never made it home." Hannah gasped. "There was an accident. He fell into a coma the same day he left you. 4 months later, he passed away." Tears filled Hannah's eyes. "I saw the messages you sent," Evelyn added. I know he loved you. Hannah couldn't speak. There's a child, isn't there? Evelyn asked. Hannah whispered, yes. Her name is Julia, she's his daughter. Evelyn wept softly. Jacob's mother is still alive. She cries every day, thinking he left nothing behind. But now, there's hope. I'll bring Julia to her, Hannah said through tears. She must know her granddaughter. After the call, Hannah sat in silence. The tears that fell were no longer of pain, but peace. Jacob hadn't abandoned her. He hadn't left her. He simply never made it back. A few days later, Dominic and Salem visited her supermarket. They found Hannah smiling, a deeper, fuller smile than ever before. Dominic placed a hand on her shoulder. You're strong, he said. And she truly was. Because even when life had knocked her down, she didn't rise with bitterness, but with hope. Moral message. Real wealth isn't in how much you have, but in how you treat those who can't repay you. We rise by lifting others. You never know whose life you're changing with one simple act of kindness. So tell me, what did you learn from Hannah's story? Was there a moment that made you cry, or smile? Share your thoughts in the comments section, I would love to read them. A brand new story is coming soon, full of twists, emotions, and unforgettable lessons. So don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone you care about. Thank you for watching.